Unified Facility Criteria UFC 34601, Designing Petroleum Facilities. Chapter 5, Marine Receiving and Dispensing Facilities. 5.1, Function. Designing marine fueling receiving facility for the purpose of receiving fuel and loading the fuel aboard ships, barges, boats, and the critical customs of its cargo. In many cases, the main marine receiving and dispensing facilities will be combined, especially requirements of the aviation turbine fuels that are in Chapter 4 of the UFC. F2, the fuel piers and waivers. Ensure the structural design fuel piers waivers in accordance with the UFC 4415201 required to approve the appropriate service headquarters design fuel piers dispensing or receiving fuel. Ensure the size of the facility is compatible with the fuel requirements of the activity number of simultaneously loading offloadings to be accommodated with the dispensing of the fuel considered with the number, the type, of the size of the vessel to be fueled and loaded to provide with the required number of location fuel outlets. In most cases, the use of dedicated fuel piers and waivers to be for fuel receipt, including the design of energy absorbing fender system to refer to the Navy Fact Divinite drawings 1403999 and 1433999. By a third, berthing piers. In some cases, permanent fuel piping equipment may be installed with the berthing piers, which were not permanently designed for handling fuel. Designs such as piers, in accordance with the UFC 4 this facilities are normally used for the dispensing fuel service combatants for the consumption or operational requirements usually dictated with clear berthing piers. Service for the imposed restrictions over the use of loading arms and above deck piping. For those areas of the truck contain piping must be considered prior to the design facilities of the berthing piers for the receiving and dispensing bulk fuel for the transport review plans of the appropriate port operation agencies. 5.4 Offshore moorings. When operating with the activity, do not warrant the construction of fuel piers provided with the offshore moorings of the vessel discharge with receive the fuel from underwater pipelines connecting to the shore facility. Clearly make up the mooring and serve the vessel and when the mooring will be proper position to pick up and connect the underwater connection coordinated with the offshore mooring system with the Naval Fuel Engineering Service Center, Ocean Construction Division, NAVSCO, OCD. General requirements. Chapter 2, General Design Information from the UFC contains important information on fueling facility. Do not start the design of any fueling facility without first becoming completely familiar with Chapter 2 of the UFC. If practical, refer to the Chapter 2 guidance for the spill prevention, air quality, other environmental safety, and fire protection. 5.6 General layout. Provided the pier and off-landing connections with the blinding of the flange of the ball valve with the throttling isolation at the pier edge of each of the product can be transported. The intent of the loading are manifold with separate manuals of isolation plug valve with each of the product connection. This will allow simultaneous loading, offloading different products, each through the dedicated arm. Provided with a double block and bead plug valve at the point in which the line is to be stripped using the following criteria. Provide each of the branch lines at the pier edge of the manual isolation valve located with the main line. Provide thermal relief valves around the isolation check valve to relieve the excessive pressure caused by the thermal expansion of the liquid trapped between shutoff points and C facility plate 025. Not provide gauge outboard with a housing connection shutoff valve that has hose movements indicated with the presence or absence of pressure in the hose. If required, provide only one more loading arms at each station. Provided with liquid fuel pressure gauge of the loading arm located with the easily reread with the operating position. The gauge is provided with the cause of the dry brake, the check valve at the end of the loading arm, and the rigid piping will not initiatively indicate the presence or absence of pressure at the loading arm. Provide venting of the draining of the branch lines and loading arm. The manifolds provide the manual venting of the branch lines connecting the vent to the oil waste line and similar to the sanitary vent system to avoid spillage. When the pier drain lines cannot be slouched back down to the pier head, stripping the pump design, including the separate oil waste drain lines, holding tank, and dedicated strip pump is a viable alternative. Provide segregated handling multiple products through the handling of the arms without allowing easy section of the products transported. Double block and bead valves can be used for this application. Provide separate pipe and connection with the ballast bolt water and off-specified fuels, the size, facility level, and active warrants in its. Provide each of the hosing handle with loading arm in the area of the fixed spill contamination is fine, and the statute 33 Code Federal Regulations Part 154. Provide hydraulic shock suppressors if required. 5.7 Piping system. Refer to Chapter 9 for the UFC information regarding piping system. 5.7.1 Piping arrangement. Additional complying with Chapter 9. Use the following criteria. where simultaneously delivers the same fuel may be made more than one vessel. Same size of the fuel headers related to the equipment for the total flow rates of all vessels discharging into the headers will ensure that the flow of the rate in accordance with Chapter 2 of the UFC. Place pier piping above the pier deck with the containment area of the fuel piers, which entrench with the berthing piers. Slope piping toward the shore with the permanent stripping with the gratings required to allow the access across the piping. C. Provided with the flexibility piping between the pier and the shore to allow the small movement of the pier relative to the shore. Use suitable pen. The offset configuration, preferably horizontal plan, will allow the three-dimensional movement in the vertical bands that are used to install the vent and drains. D. Provide flexibility in pipe along with the pier to allow the pipe growth to do the thermal expansion, horizontal expansion for the loops preferred in the space, whereas the space is totally tight, provided with the vertical expansion loops below the expansion joints where necessary, with the practical provided with the vertical expansion loops. The vent drains include the pier facilities pipe manifolds for each of the type of the file. Arranged parallel to the side face of the pier. Pipe hangers are not allowed. Alright, 5.8, equipment description. 5.8.1, loading off and loading arms. Particularly articulated marine loading arms for the receiving and shipping of the fuel cargoes so that they connected to the vessel can move the 15 feet forward and 15 feet aft and 10 feet off the face of the pier vertically as caused by the loading and offloading of the vessel's entitled change without damage to the arm. Provided with a hydraulic power assist the system operating loading arms larger than 8 inches of the nominal size, equipped the end of the loader connected to the ship manifolds with the insulation section, standard ANSI, forged steel flange, steel quick, and complying with the device manual hydraulic operated with the Navy fax drawing number 143997. Consider breakaway couplings for the location of the stronger current. 5.8.2, fuel hoses. Loading off and loading arms are preferably methods to be used provided with the facility and storing protecting of the hose as near as practical to the pier of the house and provided in lieu of the offloading an arm. 5.8.3, submarine fuel hoses. Provided with the submarine fuel hose with the offshore moorings are used the heavy-duty smoothbore oil, gasoline, marine cargo discharge hose rated for the working. Pressure at not less than 225 psi a gallon and built with the nipples and class 300 flanges, stainless steel bolts, monol nuts, and hoses that should be used by the U.S. Coast Guard certified. 5.8.4 meters. Provided the turbine positive displacement meter, the dispensing outlet with the mic with the use to be simultaneously with approval of the appropriate service headquarters for portable meters where the fueling operations are intermittent, and also consider the use of the alternative technology such as the ultrasonic meters that require the temperature compensation feeder at each of the meter using custody transfer. 5.8.4.1 meters positive displacement. Require the flange connected with the cast steel body positive displacement meters. The desired pressure of the flow rating and the applicable service requirement. Ensure the meter has the drain register. Provide the temperature compensation adjustable calibration capabilities where there is a custody transfer. Ensure the meter accessories compatibility with either the mechanical or electronic support equipment is selected. Provided with the accuracy of plus or minus 0.5% when using custody transfer. Consult the appropriate service headquarters manual for the requirements of the meter of the communication remote location equipment. Consider the use of the card operated with the key operated data acquisition system. Card and keys are as appropriate as our card to identify receiver of the fuel to allow the access for the fuel. The quantities taken each of the transmitted data receiving devices, electronic pulse, and transmitter mounted on each of the meter. Each transaction is automatically recorded. 5.8.4.2 meters and turbines. Use the flange to connect it with the seal body turbine pipe, the desired pressure, and the flow rating of the applicable service requirement provided with the flow strainer between the turbine, provided with the straight length of the pipe, minimum 10 pipe diameters upstream, 5 pipes diameters downstream. All the turbine meters are required manufacturer. Ensure the meters have the drain and the register, provided the temperature compensation adjustable calibration capabilities with the custody transfer, and also supporting the equipment for the material capability of the turbine meter selected, provide an accuracy of plus or minus 0.5%. Used by the custody transfer. Consult with the appropriate service headquarters for the requirement of the meter communication and remote control location of equipment. Consider the use of the card operated key operated data acquisition cards and keys are appropriate with the code identifying the receiver of the fuel to allow the access to the fuel, the quantities taken in the transmitted data receiving device, electronic pulse transmitter mounted on each of the meter, and each transaction automatically recorded. 5.8.5 require the basket strainer to protect the central figure pumps unless provided. Includes maintaining the non-positive suction head of the hump pump. Whether non-strainers are installed with the suction side of the central figure pumps, install a spool piece with the temporary strainers can be installed during the startup of the system. Strainers are required at the suction side of the all pumps and meters. Recipient filtration strainers are not required upstream of the issue filter. Separated diaphragm controls also use flange baskets and strainers and construed as a steel fit with a removable basket of the fine mono metal strained steel flesh with a large mesh for reinforcements. unless otherwise specified with the screen mesh of valves. The pump suction central figure has a mesh of 7 and 108 thousandths of an inch. Positive suction, positive displacement, 40 mesh, and 0.16 thousandths of an inch. Reseat filterization, 40 mesh, 0.16 thousandths of an inch. Meter installation unless downstream filter 0.64 mesh 40 0.16 thousandths of an inch. In all cases, ensure the effective screen area is not less than 3 times the cross-sectional area of the pipe. Strainers of the upstream pump shall be quickly opened, single screw type, provided with the pressure gauges on both sides of the strainer, differential type of the cross. So the gauge end of the strainer. 586 on the surge suppressor. Every effort there should be made with the control hydraulic surge to the acceptable limit to design piping. Same with it, rather than use the surge suppressor where not possible becomes to be extremely impractical. Surge suppressor may be incorporated. The use of the diaphragm bladder with the type of the equipped with the top mounted liquid filled pressure gauge with the water wafer style check valve at the bottom. Train above the check valve and the isolation valve, provided the needle valves around the check valve to permit the control black of the surge suppressor without rebounding. Locate the surge suppressor as close as possible to the point off shut off. It is expected to cause the shock. Surge suppressors can be reduced to shock pressure, but will not eliminate it entirely. Preferred with the solution, hydraulic shock is conservative with the pipe design using loops and slow causing valves. Surge suppressors are strictly large resort or solutions and require approval of service headquarters prior to design into a system. 587 valves, 5871 material construction. Require the valves of carbon steel bodies with bonnets. Do not allow the valves in aluminum, cast iron, bronze materials. Use the API fire safety valves. Isolation valves, double block and bleed isolation valves. Use the separation product services tank and shields in connection with the piping going above and below ground between the pipe here and the tank of the tank storage. Other location critical to the pressure taping the piping. Plug valves, double block and bleed. The double-seated tapered lifted lockable plug type valves with the bottom bled seats and predictable application should separation of the product surfaces when the pipe goes above below the ground between the pier and the tank of the storage. Other locations critical to pressure testing of the piping. The valve should be designed so the synthetic seating of the material is burned out of the fire and metal to metal will remain effectual closure and complying with the API standard 607. Lubricated plug valves are not allowed, including the integral body of the normal relief valve. Ball valves, double block and bleed. Use the double-seated trunnion-mounted lockable ball type valves with the body bleed between the seats. Double block and bleed. This will rarely be acceptable as all alternatives to double block and bleed plug valves. The application of the valve is operated with very infrequently example the isolation valve at the middle of the pipe here is only caused by the pressure of the testing of the piping. Valve should be designed so that the synthetic seating of the material is burned out into a fire and a fire metal to metal seat will remain effective. The closure comply with the API standard 607, including the integral body of the cavity thermal relief valve. Alright, 4. Great gate valves, double block and bleed. Usually double-seated lockable gate type valve, the body bleed between the seats. The double block and bleed will vary usually after the acceptable alternative double block and bleed plug valve. The double block and bleed valves used only when other double block and bleeds will not physically fit, and valves shall be designed with the synthetic seating material is burned out in the fire metal to metal seat. Remain affix closure to comply with the APA standard 607. Single seated gated valves are not allowed, including integral body cavity thermal relief valves. B. Quick opening, frequent opening isolation valves. Use these for less critical applications where the double block and bleed shutoff is not required. Ball valves, ball type valves may be used. The valves are quick to frequent open applications with a double block and bleed is not required. Ball valves should also be designed so that the synthetic seating of the material is burned out in a fire metal to metal, so it will remain with the effective closure. Comply with the API standard 607. Teflon Viton synthetic seating material usually fold the port of the valve will exact the same diameter of the pipe within 10 pipe diameters upstream of the 4 pipe and 5 pipe diameters downstream of the flow pressure control valve with the flow sensitive device such as the ventral valve should comply with the API standard 608. Butterfly valves are not allowed. Use full ports will accept the same diameter of the pipe when line picking is required. 5873 isolation valve operators provided with a manually operated valve, the non-specified remote automatic emergency operation gear operated for the balls, double block and bleed plug valve larger than 6 inches, double block and bleed gate and ball, and double block and bleed valve specified with the remote automatic emergency service may be electrical motor operators if appropriate, or by service headquarters provided with blocking tabs on the isolation valve to allow the padlock to be used for the lockout during the maintenance, provided with chain operators on the valves which are located 72 inches higher above the grade. 5874 isolation valve location provided with the isolation valve on each line of the short end of the pipe for the piping only with receiving the fuel. Also provided with the check valve at the short end. Use the double block and bleed type with which a motor operated with the remote controls minimize the surge potential as flow closing speed as possible. B. Provided with a double black and bleed isolation valve with above the ground in each barge and tanker uploading and the loading connection. Provided with double black and bleed isolation near the shoreline of the submerged pipeline with the offshore moorings. Provide the double block and bleed isolation valve with an inlet-outlet connection with each of the line strainer for the filter separated mater, diaphragm, and control valve. Other equipment that requires periodic servicing. L1 inlet valve with the L1 and the outlet valve may be used to isolate more than one piece of adjacent equipment which are connected in the series. Provided thermal relieves around all isolation check valves to relieve the excessive pressures caused by thermal expansion of liquid. Trap between shutoff points. See facility plates 0, 23, 24, and 25 and 26. 5875 isolation valve pits provided with fiberglass concrete pits with a rolling and hinge cover. The design in accordance with the Department of Defense Standard AW7824-28 for the isolation valves include installed with the non-traffic area underground fuel system design valve pits and valve operators so the valves can be operated manually without confined space and entry. 588 other valves. 5881 check valves. Use the check valve to prevent backflow through the pumps, branch lines, meters, and other locations. Run back reverse flow with the most avoided. Check valves may be the swing disc flow global double plate hinge disc spring located proppet ball diaphragm actuated type. The juice check the soft seat of the non-slamming type of the renewable seat of the disc. Ensure check valves conform to the API spec 680. The use of non-surgical check diagrams control the valve, the flow control feature of the discharge of all pumps. When the non-surge check diagram control the valve of the discharge, consider the use of the spring type water check before the diaphragm control valve to prevent sudden flow with the reversal during the shutdown of the passing back through the pumping through the diaphragm control valve. The diaphragm chamber is filled with the reacts with the closing of the valve. 5882 thermal relief. Provide thermal relief valves around the isolation and check valves to relieve excessive pressure caused by thermal expansion of liquid trapped between the shutoff points. See the facility plates 023, 024, 025, 026. Alright, 589, pressure and pressure vacuum gauges. The glycerine filled with the silicone filled with the pressure gauges of the range dial size and necessary but not less than 0 to 160 psi gallons. Pressure range within 40 inches of the diameter of dial. Also, they use the pressure gauges upstream, downstream of the strainer filter separated. Differential pressure gauges may be used in lieu of the gauges on each side. Install compound pressure vacuum gauges on the suction side of each of the pump of the fuel storage tanks. Provide a lever handle with the gauge cock pressure number in each of the pressure connections. Provide a pressure gauge on each side of the pipeline shutoff valve. The short end of each of the pyro mounted to the pipeline. Provide the indicating point of the high pressure reading of the telltale indicator suitable reporting high pressure expanding. And since the last reset, provide the non-contact resetting of the telltale means with a small magnet. E. Provide the pressure gauge from each of the branch line with each of the fueling system on each of the pyramid pipeline. Ensure the pressure gauge is legible with the fuel housing connection array with the pantographic loading arms in the location as provided. Provide pressure gauge on each of the marine loading arm assembly. If provided, ensure the gauge is visible by the operator. Pressure the gauge should be installed so that they are testable without removing them from the pipe. 5810 stripper pumps. Provided with positive displacement, stripper pumps are empty loading arms that hose the manifold. Provide the stripper pump to reclaim each clean product from each of the main product line. Connect the product lines to the oil waste drain line, conducting an economic analysis with the term alternative approach of choice. Larger, longer, or more frequently drained will favor the stringer pipe choice. Using a stringer pipe with multiple products but does not exceed acceptable limits across the combination. Provide dedicated stripper pump to each of the separate product lines, such as an aviation turbine fuels. 5811 excessive flow sensors. In piping, use of the both loading offloading provided a sensor with alarm bolt to the control room with the period detected excessive flow that might occur in the event of a line of break. 5812 solid cylindrical separators. The facility received the product of the tanker barges. Consider the use of the solid separators receiving the lines as part of the pre-filterization. Remove the gross impurities from the incoming product. The system equipped with the filter separator for the receiving lines. Local strainer cylindrical separators upstream with the filter separator. Ensure that there are no sludge valve with the featuring filter separator. Considering the use of automatic water drains does not always reverse the cylindrical separators. 5813 grounding system. Provided grounding system for the barge in accordance with the UFC 346003 figure 92. 5814 special conserves aviation turbine fuels for inbound filterization aviation turbine fuels for the Chapter 4 for the UFC. Alright, 5-9. Product recovery system provided the product recovered to collect and store use of the aviation turbine, but would otherwise become the waste operational maintenance activity. Consider a product recovery system for the other products. Chapter 8 of the Unified Control Product and Recovery System. 510 weather sheds provide adequate shelter for the personnel, as well as spill containment booms, absorbent materials, and other weather insensitive equipment. 511 canopies whenever provided a canopy unless otherwise directed for the surface categories for all above ground equipment, including pumps, meters, strainers, filters, control panels, electrical panels, motor control centers. Ensure the structural design is in accordance with the UFC 1200-01, UFC 3-301-01. 512 special calculations calculating pipeline filling venting time, the drain stripping time. The larger and the longer the pipeline, the greater the volume of the fuel required to fill in the line, and therefore the greater the volume area required to be vented. Undersized vent lines will be delayed filling the lines with delay charging the output of the products from product lines, so as vents and lines, allowing the line at more than 4 times the transit time of the line, conducting the vent line with the drain line valve to avoid spills in the environment, to check the void vent of the line of air velocity, which must exceed allowable air velocity to avoid electrostatic buildup in accordance with the API RP 2003 vent rate must not less than the lowest allowable pumping rate with the shipping the shore. The vent rate must be less than the design transit velocity, minimizing hydraulic shock. 513 safety showers and eye wash fountains provided with the manual shutoff valve at the portable water branch of the safety shower. The eye wash fountains provided the means to seal shut off the valve in the open position. This will ensure the operation of the emergency, yet allow the servicing of the single shower without shut off in potable water with the whole pier. Designed for the freezing protection and climate subject to the freezing. Install safety showers, eye washing fountains in accordance with the ISEA Z358-1. Alright, 514 traffic boulders. Provided with the traffic boulders, traffic boulders to protect fuel piping and equipment on the piers. Waivers utilizing concrete filled steel pipe with a minimum 4-inch diameter and 4-foot height embedded with the concrete welding steel plate mounted on the structure. 515 special drainage for the fueling of the piers. Provide an interception system with the collector oil spills placing the pipe at the piers with the curb contaminant with the dry system and independent with the drainage. Provide the contaminant also with the loading arm risers. Provide locking valves normally closing the position on all containment areas along the sump pumps and other means of reviewing the spilled fuel to collection point of the tank. In this case, the stormwater collected with the intercepted system is contaminated with the water fuel mixture should be treated as an oil spill as directly previously. 516 ballast and sludge removal. Ballast treatment and sludge removal. 516.1 ballast receiving treatment facility. 516.1 designing requirement. It is the policy of the United States that there should be no discharge of oil hazardous substances into and upon navigable waters of the United States, adjoining shorelines, or into or upon waters on contiguous zones, petroleum facilities which transfer by barge, tanker, and which are large fuel ships shall require ballast water collection treatment facilities to receive the treaty oil ballast for the cargo of the fuel tanks. Also, blending the fuel which has been reclaimed with the ballast water during the collection treatment process of the boiler fuel oil with the use of the shoreside from boilers, pouring quality assurance check of the reclaimed fuel oil to ensure the meet of the minimum requirements of the shoreside boiler fuel. Dispose of the sludge accumulated during the collection and treatment of the ballast water in accordance with the applicable hazardous waste management disposal procedure. Select design appropriate treatment system based on an evaluation of the type of the oil water mixture that may be encountered with the particular facility. It is possible based on the elevation sample, the takeable ballast water receipt, the tank washing, including the following. 1. Whether the simple mixtures, simple gravity suspension with chemical stability emulsions, the specific gravity viscosity of the oil mixture. Whenever the other substance of the chemicals and bacteria in the mixture must be removed. The general condition of the ship tanks accepted to be discharged new, clean coated, well maintained, dirty, or normally full with sludge or scale or rust. Where the ballast water and clean seawater are polluted with the harbor water. Where the treatment system proposed with the ship waste shall offload with the barge and the fixed shore facility meets the standards of the effluent water quality established by local environmental regulations. is determined by both simple and mixtures and emulsions are present. Considered possibility of using two segregated separate systems, one with the gravity separation, other with the breaking emulsions, and the mixing of the two types of suspension with the possible bilge from water. Other contaminated oil wastes, which are additional treatment, with refer to the UFC 483 201N Industrial Oil Water Control for the Army and Air Force Project Military Handbook 1005-17. Um, Non-domestic wastewater controlment and treatment designed for typical schematic arrangement with the ballast water treatment and disposal. Refer to the UFGS 444253. 516.1.2 Receiving and settling tanks. Minimum ballast water received at the facility usually required the two storage tanks, usually with the equal capacity, to be used alternatively as receiving and settling tanks. If these tanks are sized to allow 4 to 5 days undistributed settlement separation with simple suspension of light oils into the water can be achieved. The use of the welded steel vertical above ground storage tank design constructed in accordance with the Chapter 8 of the UFC. In addition, with complying with the Chapter 8 of the UFC, the construction and prudency provided with the following fittings and prudencies: an automatic float gauge suitable for the use of the transmitting device with remote readout, one capable operated swing line assembled with the oil outlet pipe, one shell fill nozzle, valve sample connection shell with the having non-freeze type, the valves closed, cold climbs every 2 feet vertically as easily accessible for later straightaway. When chemical feeds are provided with a chemical feed inlet valve to be non-freezing type of the cold climates. When air blowing is provided with the perforated pipe with the air spouge or the mixing of the perforations inside of the pump to avoid plugging and settling solids. On non-freezing type of airlet and valve cold climates. Sight glasses lock and block. Sight glasses look in box on the oil outlet line. Sight glasses look on box at water outlet line. Oil sump tank in the high level arm. Water oil pumps required to move the fluids in the receiving tank from the oil sump tanks for transfer oil, water, or low speed type of the pumps, minimizing emulsification. Okay, if the heater is required to reduce the viscosity to promote the separation either for the tank of the wall, heater's internal pipe to keep the internal pipes at least 2 feet above the tank of the floor. Insulation tanks that will be regularly heated with the provided automatic temperature control and the thermometers of the heated tanks. 516.13 Oil water separators with separate water fuel mixture storage and settled in the API oil water separator, reducing the fuel portion pressure. The water portion in another treatment process does not discharge water from the drawn with the tank surface water with additional treatment permits. Chapter 2 of the UFC contains the design information of the API oil water separator. 517 Sludge Removal System. 517.1 Design and Requirements. Install sludge removal systems which accumulation of sludge in substantial quantities like occur on a regular basis, such as sludge and ballast water treatment system, contaminated fuel recovery system, frequent cleaning of the shores and shipping tanks, routine cleaning with the cleaning product storage tanks and occurs on the irregular basis. Sludge removal systems are not required. 517.2 Sludge disposal. When possible, provided that the pumps and tanks and pipes returning the sludge contained with the recoverable oil of the contaminated oil recovery system. If it is not possible, consider the transfer of the sludge to the refinery waste oil treatment facility. For additional details, refer to the UFC 3240029. 02N. For Army Projects UFC 32400N. UFC 3240009 FA. Provide a tank and the tanks to the transfer pump with the pumpable sludges with unreclaimable, including piping, receiving sludge for the mixing other than local viscosity waste other oils within thinning is required. Ensure the tanks are dike enclosed, have cone bottoms. Provided the tank coating, heating with the climate conditions of province improving necessary. Coordinate the sludge disposal method with the design facility environmental office. Enclosed sludge disposal facility with a security fence to prevent the unauthorized entry to dispose. Do not use facility to dispose sanding of the gravel, the rust scales, and other non-pulmonal matter with the fountain with the tank bottoms. Further discussion disposal method Navy Fact MO230. 517.3 Materials. Chapter 9 of the UFC information regarding the pipelines. Chapter 6 Internal and installation of pipelines.